Hello everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to take a cheap Dollar Tree sign and turn it into something for Easter and something for Valentine's Day as well, or you could just leave it up all year round. So we begin with this little sign. I had already pulled the glitter lettering off of the top, and then this little cardboard was left. So I need to get that off of there because I want to use both sides of the sign. My little Japan scraper worked really well to get it to release where it had been glued in a few places. I'm removing the little string there because I'm not going to reuse that. But the holes were so small, I needed to make them bigger because eventually I know I'm going to want to put some ribbon through there. And the next task is to paint it white. Because I'm going to be doing decoupage, you always want to use a very light color. White is usually the best option. And I'm painting the back side. I didn't want to have to do several coats to cover up that orange, so I'm using the back side for this. This product happens to be gesso, which I really like using because it dries so very quickly. But you can really only use gesso on a porous surface. Chalk paint works as well. Acrylic is my last resort for this because it just takes so long to dry. I'm using some napkins for the decoupage today, and I believe I got them from decoupagenapkins.com, but there's so many places, especially on Etsy, where you can get beautiful decoupage napkins and paper. Now, when you're using a napkin, whether it be 2-ply or 3-ply, you have to remove the plies, so where you're only using the top colored portion. And my little trick there is to use a piece of masking tape, and you just put it on the back side and it grabs that and you can pull it right off. Apparently I neglected to film actually applying the napkin, but basically I just used Mod Podge this time to apply it, laid the napkin down, smoothed it out, and then brushed over the top again with Mod Podge. Here I'm removing the excess on the edges with a sanding sponge. You want to just brush one direction. Now it's time to put a top coat on, and I'm just using Amy Howard's matte sealer over the top, and we'll let that dry. Aren't these just the sweetest little bunnies? You know, when I see things like this, I think about the artist that created it. I'm always in awe of their talent and sharing it so that we can use what they've created. Enough of my exposition though, back to the project at hand. The way I separate the napkin portion is just simply to use water and a paintbrush. Draw where you want to pull it apart and then carefully tear along those lines. I've already used my little tape trick to remove the back 2 plies of the little bunnies here. And now I've laid it on the heart and I'm very lightly sketching with a pencil the shape. It's not a perfect circle because the bunnies aren't a perfect circle. But I need to do that so that I can now paint that area with some white chalk paint. I've let the chalk paint dry, and now I am putting a layer of matte sealer. Again, just using the Amy Howards that I buy at Ace Hardware. I'm putting that over the white paint. And you might be wondering, okay, why are you doing that? Well, after I put the sealer on, I actually could go ahead and apply the napkin because a clear sealer will act as a glue. But instead, I'm going to show you something very different. You're going to get a very flat, smooth finish by actually ironing the napkin onto the wood surface. Now, when you do this, you need to use parchment paper or even regular white paper, but white paper can scorch, so I like to use the parchment paper. This is a different way to decoupage, and I especially like it when using napkins. I wish I had done that really with the original napkin on the heart because I did get a few wrinkles. But using this method for napkins, and you can do it for other decoupage papers too, but you get a totally smooth finish. And that dried coat of sealer is going to act as the glue. The heat from the iron reactivates the sealer, and it makes the napkin then adhere, like gluing it down. I will be adding something else to the bunny side of the heart, but I need it to be totally flat right now so that I can work on the other side. What I'm going to use is Iron Orchid Designs Air Dry Clay. I just love their clay. It's one of the best clays out there that I have ever tried. So I began to work the clay first, warming it up in my hands. And because I'm going to be rolling this out, I'm kind of doing it like I would a pie crust dough, kind of getting my shape a little bit, getting it kind of flat, kind of heart-shaped there. Before I actually lay it down, I'm trying to thin it as much as I can, squeezing it with my hands. And then when I get it fairly flat, that's when I'm going to use a large rolling pin to work it and work it and work it until it's probably about between an eighth, I guess, 1/16 and an eighth of an inch thick. Adding some more clay, tearing off clay in parts to add where I am missing pieces to the edge. And now I use my little brayer along with the big rolling pin to kind of flatten out those areas so it won't be lumpy. Titebond Quick and Thick. It's the best glue that I have found to adhere air dry clay to any surface. The only place I can find it though is at Lowe's. I'm sure you can order it, but you know, when you need glue, you want to be able to go out and get glue. Now, carefully, I've just laid that down and I'm working out the little air bubbles that come up. And just kind of carefully rubbing along the edges to trim it. And here comes another fun part. I'm going to be using Iron Orchid Designs Lady of Shalott stamp to create impressions into the air dry clay. So the first thing I do is kind of play around with the different stamps and lay out where I think I want to put things. Flowers, different types, leaves, and I want to use that great big flower right there. So I'm going to stamp the big flower first, and you noticed I used my Iron Orchid Designs brayer to evenly apply pressure. You don't want to move or scoot the stamps at all because then you'll get a blurry impression. So using my fingers and then occasionally the brayer to apply even pressure, I stamp all over the heart. To add a little more interest and texture, I used my little poker thing there in between where the flowers were in the blank spaces and just kind of poked at the clay. Well, if you don't know about air dry clay, it shrinks and it cracks. And this certainly did shrink and crack. If I had it to do again, there would be two things that I would do. First, I would take the time and patience to paint the base, the orange, because it's going to be, I'm going to have to put on the paint pretty thickly to get it to cover. And the next thing I would do is I'd probably let a crust come over the clay and then go ahead and paint it. That would help a little bit with the shrinkage. I really don't mind the cracks though, because I think they look kind of cool. Now the color I'm using here is called Evergreen Fog. It is the 2022 Sherwin-Williams Color of the Year. And it's kind of interesting because all of the American companies' colors that they've chosen or created for 2022 Color of the Year, and a lot of the European ones too, are a muted green. I think this is really pretty. I did not buy it just for this heart. I actually bought it because I'm going to be redoing a chest, a thrift flip, and that video will be coming in the future. But this dries to a very soft, well, a foggy green. To highlight the relief areas of the flowers, I'm using Alchemy old white paste, antique old white paste. And I'm just rubbing it in here and there with my fingers. Back to IOD's air dry clay, I want to create some clay flowers. And the video is kind of self-explanatory, so I'll just let you watch what I do, let them dry, and then I paint them with some acrylic paint. finish up the bunny side of the wreath, I did not want to use air dry clay or with any molds for a couple of reasons. I didn't want it to look too heavy. I wanted it airy. And the other reason is because the bunny wreath is actually not a complete circle. It goes in and out. So I decided to use some grapevine that I had, and I'm just hot gluing it around and around and around. Before gluing on the clay, flowers, and leaves, I wanted it to look more delicate and airy. So I grabbed some tulle that I had and just kind of cut a long rectangle, and then just on one edge just kind of gathered and wrapped until it was somewhat of a circle. Hot glued that on there. And I did 3 clumps of those prior to applying the flowers. So I'll let you just watch and see how the whole thing was finished off.